Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the first lecture of chapter 17, chapter 18, excuse me. And what we're talking about today is the perfect system passive. And remember, the perfect system comprises the tenses perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. Okay, so all three of these tenses in the passive are formed by using the fourth principal part. Okay, so you have to use the fourth principal part of the verb, and for perfect, we use the fourth principal part plus sum. For pluperfect, we use the fourth principal part plus eram, which is the imperfect of sum. And for the future, we use the fourth principal part plus ero, which is the future of sum. So it kind of goes in sequential order: perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect, sum, eram, and ero. So I'm going to give you examples of all of these. So we're going to start with perfect passive. Of course, this is all in the indicative mood. Okay, so the verb I'm going to use is the verb audio. So if I were to give the principal parts of audio, audio, audire, audivi, and auditum. Okay, so audio, audire, audivi, auditum. And we're going to use the fourth principal part, except I'm going to take the fourth principal part and I'm actually going to make it masculine. We can do that with the fourth principal part. So I'm going to say auditus, and then I'm going to use sum. So auditus sum. The second person singular would be auditus s, just like I were conjugating sum in the present tense. And third singular, auditus est. Okay, first plural, auditi, I changed the US ending, I changed that to plural. So auditi, it's plural masculine. So auditi sumus. And second plural would be auditi estis. And then third plural, auditi sunt. Okay, and you can do this for any verb that's transitive that has a fourth principal part. They're all formed the same way for every conjugation. So if I used amo, it would be amatus sum, or dokeo, doctus sum, or peto, petitus sum. So it doesn't matter what conjugation it is, you just use the fourth principal part plus the endings for sum. And now if we were translating this form, auditus sum would be I have been heard. Okay, so I have been heard, or we can make this simple past and say I was heard. Okay, so you can, just like the perfect active you can make simple past, you can make the perfect passive simple past as well. Okay, so have been or was. And that works for all the translations. So auditus est, you have been heard. Auditus est. Auditus est would be he has been heard because we have a masculine ending. The gender of this is changeable. So I could change the US to an A, audita est, and then it would be she has been heard. Or I could even change it to neuter, and I could say it has been heard. You can technically do that with any of the persons and numbers. Technically, the fourth principal part works like an adjective. It can be us, or depending on your subject. Okay, and I'll talk about that more in just a second. Okay, and then in the plural, auditi sumus, we have been heard. Auditi estis, you all have been heard. And auditi sunt, they have been heard. Okay, so let's go back to this point about the genders. Say I wanted to construct this sentence. Okay, the men have been heard. Okay, the men are weary. They're obviously masculine. Okay, they're the subject, so we would need a third person plural verb. Auditi sunt. Okay, the men have been heard. And I used auditi because, like an adjective, it agrees with this noun. All right, now consider this sentence. Okay, the women have been heard. All right, now my subject is feminine, so I have femini, and now I have to change my ending to auditi sunt, okay, to modify the subject. So auditi modifying femini. Okay, so the women have been heard. So just know that when you conjugate using the fourth principal part in perfect passive, then you change the gender of the fourth principal part, which really works like an adjective in order to modify whatever your subject is. Okay, so keep that in mind. It could be masculine, feminine, or neuter. Okay, so that's perfect. Now let's talk about pluperfect. Okay, so I'll set up another chart. First, second, and third person, and singular and plural. Okay, so for pluperfect, again, I'll use audio as our verb. So we're going to use the fourth principal part. We're going to make it masculine. And this time I'm going to use eram, the imperfect ending of sum. So auditus eram, auditus eras, auditus erat, auditi eramus. Okay, it's two words. Auditi eratus, and auditi erant. Okay, and when you're translating this, auditus eram would be I had been heard. Okay, auditus eras, you had been heard, etc. Auditus erat, he had been heard. And again, you can change this to feminine, audita erat, she had been heard, or you could change it to neuter, auditum erat, it had been heard. So keep in mind, just like with the perfect passive, you can change the ending on the fourth principal part. And in the plural, you have to make it plural, whether it's masculine, feminine, or it could also be neuter. Okay, now let's move to future perfect. Okay, so future perfect passive. Okay, going to again set up our conjugation chart, first, second, and third person, singular and plural, and we'll keep using audio, auditus, and this time we're going to use the future endings for some. Auditus ero, auditus eris, auditus erit, auditi erimus, auditi eritis, and then finally auditi erunt. Okay, and so when we translate the first person singular, auditus ero, I will have been heard. Okay, and the same thing applies to the endings, right? We can make this feminine, or we can make it neuter, right? We can make this feminine plural, or we can make it neuter plural. Okay, so remember, the fourth principal part works like an adjective, and it has to agree with the subject. So if I have been heard, and I'm a male, I'm masculine, I'm going to use auditus. But if I happen to be feminine, I would use audita. Okay, and that's it for this talk on the perfect system passive. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and see you next time.